Have you ever imagined waking up one morning and discovering that an entire continent is slowly tearing itself apart? It sounds like the beginning of a disaster movie, but this is not fiction. Deep in East Africa, a massive crack has appeared in the earth, stretching across countries like Kenya, Ethiopia, and Tanzania. Some parts of this crack are only a few millimeters wide, but others are so large that roads, houses, and entire fields have been split apart. At first, people thought it was just weak soil collapsing after heavy rains. Villagers tried to fill the gap with dirt. In some places, workers even built temporary bridges so cars could pass again. But the more scientists studied the situation, the more shocking the truth became. This wasn't just a small geological accident. What they discovered was something far bigger, something powerful happening deep beneath the surface of the earth. According to geologists, the entire African continent is slowly splitting into two massive pieces, and if this process continues, one day a brand new ocean could appear right in the middle of Africa. But here's the twist. This isn't something that suddenly started yesterday. The forces responsible for this dramatic event have been quietly shaping our planet for hundreds of millions of years. The crack we see today is only a tiny glimpse of a much larger story, a story that began long before humans even existed. To understand why Africa is splitting today, we need to go back in time, far back in Earth's history. Because the truth about Africa is even more fascinating than the crack itself. Millions of years ago, the continents we know today didn't exist in the same form. Instead, all land on Earth was connected as one gigantic supercontinent known as Pangaea. Imagine a world where Africa, South America, North America, Europe, Asia, and Australia were all joined together like pieces of a giant puzzle. This massive landmass existed around 300 million years ago, but Earth is not as stable as it seems. Beneath the surface, huge slabs of rock called tectonic plates are constantly moving. These plates float on molten rock deep inside the planet. And slowly, very slowly, they drift. Over millions of years, the supercontinent began to break apart. The first pieces drifted away, forming new oceans and separating the continents we recognize today. One of the biggest separations happened between South America and Africa. Even today, if you look at a world map carefully, the eastern coastline of South America fits almost perfectly with the western coastline of Africa, like two puzzle pieces that were once connected. Scientists confirmed this theory when they discovered identical fossils on both continents. Creatures that could never cross an ocean were found in both places, proving that the land had once been joined together. But the movement of tectonic plates never stopped. Even today, the Earth's surface is constantly shifting, although the changes are usually too slow for us to notice. Continents drift only a few millimeters each year, about the same speed that your fingernails grow. However, sometimes nature gives us a visible reminder of these powerful forces. And East Africa is one of those places. Stretching thousands of kilometers from the Red Sea down toward Mozambique lies one of the most fascinating geological features on Earth, the East African Rift. This enormous rift system is essentially a giant crack in the Earth's crust. It runs through multiple countries, including Kenya, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Uganda, and several others. In some areas, the land has already sunk down dramatically, forming long valleys surrounded by steep cliffs. These valleys are known as rift valleys, and they stretch across East Africa like scars carved into the continent. But the real story lies deep underground. Scientists discovered that the African continent is actually sitting on two different tectonic plates, the Nubian plate and the Somali plate. For millions of years, these two plates have been slowly moving away from each other, and that movement is exactly what's causing the land to split. When the plates pull apart, the Earth's crust stretches and cracks. Sometimes the ground sinks, forming valleys and lakes. Other times, molten rock rises from deep below the surface, creating volcanoes. That's why East Africa is home to some of the most famous volcanoes in the world, including Mount Kilimanjaro and Mount Nyiragongo. But recently, something happened that shocked even experienced geologists. In 2018, a massive crack suddenly opened along a highway in Kenya after heavy rainfall. The ground literally split apart, leaving a deep trench that stretched for several kilometers. Cars could no longer pass. Villagers gathered around the site in disbelief. Videos of the crack quickly spread across the internet. Some people believed it was a sign of an approaching disaster. Others thought the continent might be splitting faster than scientists had predicted. But experts soon explained that the crack itself wasn't the beginning of the process. It was just a visible symptom of something that had been happening underground for millions of years. The truth is that East Africa has been slowly pulling apart for a very long time. In fact, scientists estimate that the plates are separating by about 6 to 7 millimeters each year. That may sound tiny, but over millions of years, even small movements create enormous changes. And if the process continues long enough, something incredible could happen. One day, the eastern part of Africa may completely break away from the rest of the continent. Imagine countries like Kenya, Tanzania, and Ethiopia slowly drifting away from mainland Africa, eventually forming a huge island surrounded by water. As the plates continue to separate, seawater from the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean could flood the Rift Valley. Over time, this could create a brand new ocean dividing the continent in two. In other words, the map of the world would look completely different from what we know today. But here's what makes the story even more fascinating. The process is extremely slow. Scientists believe it could take anywhere from 5 million to 50 million years before Africa fully splits apart. That means none of us will actually witness the final result. However, we are lucky enough to see the early stages of a geological transformation that will reshape the planet. And the African continent itself is already full of incredible natural wonders formed by these forces. For example, the famous Great Rift Valley stretches over 6,000 kilometers from the Middle East down to Mozambique. Along this massive valley lie some of the deepest lakes in the world, including Lake Tanganyika and Lake Malawi. These lakes were created as the land slowly sank between separating tectonic plates. And the region is also one of the most important places in human history. Many scientists believe that early humans first evolved somewhere within this same rift system. Fossils discovered in Kenya suggest that some of the earliest ancestors of modern humans lived in this region millions of years ago. So in a strange way, the same forces that may one day divide Africa were also present when humanity itself first appeared. But the impact of Africa's geological secrets goes far beyond cracks and valleys. Beneath its soil lies an extraordinary wealth of natural resources. Africa holds some of the largest reserves of minerals on Earth, including diamonds, gold, cobalt, and rare metals used in modern electronics. One particularly important mineral is coltan, which is used to produce capacitors in smartphones, laptops, and many other electronic devices. A huge portion of the world's coltan supply comes from Central Africa. In fact, geologists estimate that nearly 1/3 of the planet's natural resources are located somewhere on the African continent. Yet despite this incredible wealth, many African countries still struggle with poverty, political instability, and limited access to education and healthcare. This contrast makes Africa one of the most complex and misunderstood regions in the world, a land filled with both extraordinary riches and deep challenges. But perhaps the most powerful reminder of Earth's hidden forces lies beneath the surface itself. The crack spreading through East Africa is not a sign of destruction. It's a glimpse into the dynamic nature of our planet. The ground beneath our feet may feel solid and permanent, but in reality it is constantly moving, shifting, and reshaping the world. Mountains rise, oceans open, continents drift apart. And sometimes, if we are paying attention, we get to witness the beginning of these incredible transformations. The splitting of Africa may take millions of years to complete, but the story has already begun. Every small earthquake, every volcanic eruption, every tiny movement of the tectonic plates is another chapter in that story. And somewhere deep beneath the valleys and plains of East Africa, the Earth is quietly continuing its work. Slowly, patiently, preparing the planning of the future that will look very different from the world we know today. Because the real secret of Africa isn't just the crack visible on the surface. The real secret is the unstoppable power hidden beneath the ground, a force that has shaped continents for hundreds of millions of years, and will continue shaping them long after we are gone.